back to another episode of the Catholic Buzz podcast. Thanks for joining us today as we continue in the Advent season, in our 5th season of the Catholic Buzz podcast. My name is Father Daniele, and I'm joined by Josh Sullivan.
Yeah, hello.
Josh, just me and you again today. Of course, Matthew
still
taking care of his newborn child. God bless them.
And the 6 kids. Like, they got 6 kids
Number
now.
6.
So he's taking care of all 6, or all the 5 kids, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And Trishmi's probably taking care of the
Exactly.
little David.
Little baby David. Congratulations again to them. Of course, we announced that last week on our podcast. And I wonder if Matt's just at home listening to us today.
I think he is. I'm probably having a one-way conversation with the... I bet
like
you
talking like he's part of the table.
He's probably listening to it out on his tractor or in the basement.
Hi, Matt.
Yeah, hi, Matt. He's listening to it and he's thinking, oh, I could say this then. I think that's probably what's going on.
Well, because Matt's not here today, and of course, our producer Dave had an idea that we would sort of talk about my own journey to the priesthood today with you.
Yeah.
And so I think that we're going to try and do that in sort of a conversation way, but I'll try and be as candid as possible.
Well, I think that's good. I think because a lot of people, like, we'll switch the host duties a little bit around.
Yeah, and and I must say right off the bat, I don't. As much as I'm comfortable in front of a crowd and doing media, I'm not used to doing things where I talk about myself.
I know, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit...
It'll be a little uncomfortable for me, but, I think it's fine. I think people...
Well, I think people, so when we share our own testimony, we've talked about this many times before. When we share our own testimony, we share about our own thing, people are going to get out of it what... things that you might not even realize that they get out of it, but they're going to look at different experiences. And so this, your journey and things that you might have experienced or whatever else, people are going to get to know you a little bit better. And as you said, speaking as candidly as possible, but also
because they're not used to that, right?
But also that they're to help them with their own faith journey, they might have things that you're talking about that like, oh, that makes sense. Maybe I got to do this, or maybe that's something I got to think about. So I think that's part of sharing our testimony, and we're called as Christians, and we've talked about this, the 3-minute testimonies and being able to take our own life stories and then be able to experience and share those with others. And so I think that's a great opportunity. Now, the thing with you is you're normally facilitating that for all the other people.
Right.
And so it's
and it's fine. I mean, if it's going to help for the cause. I just think that there's better things to talk about than me. You know what I mean? So I always think that, we should always point towards God's glory, and I'm just a small little piece in that puzzle. But yes, if it, like you said, if it's going to help other people,
well, you're going to be the shepherd. You're going to be the witness. You're going to be the test subject. No, you're going to be the person that people can be like, yeah, okay, Father did that. I can do that. That kind of thing. Okay. So one of the first things, I think one of the things that people want to know about you, Father Daniele, but specifically is about the priesthood. And I think there's a lot of questions that are kind of behind a veil of the priesthood. How you become a priest, or how you kind of discern priesthood, how you have grown up, and then maybe the struggles that priests go through, or the things that experience, like priest is a shepherd of the faith, but also a business administrator. Also, like there's a bunch of those little things that kind of come in that people might not realize or maybe take into heart, of all the different things that a priest might do, an active priest specifically like yourself. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Did you grow up Catholic? What were you like when you were a kid? Like, were you thinking, oh, I'm going to be a priest? Or were you kind of like, when did it start to hit you that maybe this is a path?
Yeah, and I think just before I answer that question, just to mention, the veil of the priesthood sort of thing. Like growing up, it wasn't something that I thought I would ever experience. Like, I used to love my priests and really look up to them, but like the process of becoming a priest and the process of discerning the priesthood and the process of, sort of growing in faith, I didn't think that I would experience that in my own life, right?
Yeah.
I did grow up Catholic. My parents are immigrants from Italy, so they moved to Canada, and separately they met in Canada and they got married here in Canada.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
And so they had my older brother first, and then me. I was the middle child. I have a younger brother as well. So we grew up in a Catholic family, but we grew up Catholic because, of course, all the Italians are Catholic.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So culturally Catholic. On my mom's side, there's some, my grandparents, very faithful. I mean, my dad's side probably too, but there, when you go to my mom's town in Sardinia, where she's from in Italy, there's a street. My mom's maiden name is Filia, and there's a street called Monsignor Filia.
Oh, so somewhere down the line.
I always say I'm not the first priest in the family, but they frown at that idea. They don't think that that's part of our family. But yeah, so we grew up culturally Catholic. Like my mom brought us to church on the weekend, me and my brothers. But it wasn't something that we really practiced at home. Like we didn't pray before meals, or we didn't pray the rosary together. So when I see families do that today and the impact that it has on families, I'm like, wow, God bless these families that take time, right? So I would say I grew up in a typically Catholic Italian family where, if you go to Italy, the men sort of drop off the women at church, and then they go to the cafe, the bar,
across
to get
the
an
road,
espresso,
and smoke.
And when mass is over, they pick up their wives and continue on. My dad stayed at home during church and came with us on Christmas or Easter, right? I went to public school most of my life. I went to Catholic school for kindergarten and grade 1. Yeah. And maybe grade 2. Yeah, I think grade 2. And then our school closed and we transferred to the public system. And from grade 3 on, I went to public school right through to the end of high school. Yeah. So I was never part of the Catholic school system, really. I was as a child, but I don't really remember it. But, even in the public system, I remember I was really involved in high school. Yeah. I was the president of our student council in high school and involved with different things. And I remember that I got a job, actually. I'm skipping way ahead of your question because I'm on a roll here. But I got a job as a summer student in my parish. And where I grew up, my church, St. Clement Church in Sudbury, which is now closed, it closed in 2002, was just like 1, 2, 3 blocks from my house up the hill.
So you could just walk to
work. We
Yeah.
walked to church. Yeah. And so I got a job at the church as a summer student. So my priest at the time asked me, like, can you cut the grass? Can you water the flowers? Can you do all that stuff? Then it turned into, mop the floor in the hall or carry this downstairs or, it was just whatever. So I would walk up and, I didn't have really set hours. But what I did do was I always felt that I had some faith. Right. I always, maybe if I didn't understand it really, truly, but I remember getting a job at the church. I had the opportunity. I was around holy images, statues. I was on this holy place. And then I was able to just ask stupid questions. I was 13 or 14 years old. So I was asking stupid questions to my pastor. And then my pastor was the director of Catholic communications. They did the Mass for shut-ins on CTV. Okay. So I was also hired to do set up the camera, set up the lights, so I started getting involved in sort of media stuff, right? Yeah. Anyways, through that, I became friends with my pastor, which was really funny because he was in his late 60s. Yeah. And here I was 13, 14, right? But even though he was gruff and tough as I describe him, he was so good with me and answered my questions even though they were stupid. And just guided me, encouraged me, trusted me. Then we did youth ministry, and then we did other things, and just involvement in the parish, right? So it was a really good way. And actually, I'm really grateful for those moments as a teenager because as much as I got in trouble a lot as a teenager, I used to go out and party and all these different things. It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot worse. My faith was a struggle during my teenage years, right? You want to have fun with your friends, and then you want to be faithful to not only my faith but also representing. I was an employee of the church. Yeah. You want to be a good representative of the church. So there was a bit of a struggle there for me. I'll admit that.
Sure. Now, when you're growing up and stuff, at this time, are you thinking the priesthood is a possibility even for you, as a teenager working in the church, doing that kind of stuff? Or is it still not really in your mind?
I remember when I was a child, I got this first communion gift. It was a missal, your first communion mass book. And I remember playing mass in my room. Yeah. But
were you an altar server?
Oh yeah. All my life.
Yeah. Were your brothers too?
my older brother for sure. Like I outlasted them.
Yes.
Like they quit.
Yeah.
And I kept going.
Yeah,
right?
but you were working for the church too. So
Yeah, of course.
You had that connection, that relationship with the pastor and with the church environment,
Exactly.
I'm going to say. So it made sense.
So I don't know if I thought about that early, but in my teenager years, I kept thinking like, I really liked being at the church.
Yeah.
Like I really liked it. I really liked being around my priest. And I really liked my priest because as much as he turned people, I say this with all love for him, and God rest his soul. He turned people off. He turned some people off.
He was gruff.
Yes, but it was because he taught the faith with great authenticity.
Yeah.
And so like absurd things really like drew out of him this gruffness.
Gotcha.
And I appreciated that.
Yeah, for sure.
I was like, wow, someone's actually telling us the truth.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. And that's what I really liked about him. And some people, were turned off by that. And that's fine.
We've talked about it in the past how like dealing with youth ministry. So you and I both deal with youth ministry, and especially the other individuals that we work with that deal with youth ministry. I think one of the things that when you're dealing with youth is that authentic, just being able to say, because teenagers, specifically students in general, can smell manure from a mile away. And so if you're diving into it, you're not quite sure, the truest answer you can give them is I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to come up with something or trying to explain something that you don't know. And so giving them that authentic, I don't know, or this is the answer, and not sugarcoating it, just giving it the full, I think teenagers specifically, in my experience, students are drawn to that. They don't want it sugarcoated. They want the truth because no one really, by sharing the truth directly to them face to face, you're now treating them like an adult. You're not treating them like a child. You know what I mean? And they respect that and they enjoy that. So that's the kind of that you would get out of seeing that in the priest giving those answers.
Yeah, and I saw it back then. There were people in my youth group. Like for example, people in my youth group. I went to World Youth Days in Toronto in 2002 with a group from our diocese. Like almost no one from that group practices their faith today.
Yeah.
Almost no one from my youth group practices their faith today.
Yeah.
And that's why I always say to you, because we work together all the time in youth ministry, I always say I'm very protective of my youth.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I mean by that is I'm careful who speaks to them.
Yeah.
Like who we get as a presenter,
yeah,
who we get as a teacher.
You don't want to lead them astray.
What we're teaching them, because we have to root our faith in Christ.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the gift that I was given as a teenager in my parish with my pastor. I really came to know Jesus. And people in our youth group were coming maybe for the social part of it, which is fine. But there was no root there.
Was your pastor a part of the youth group, or was he just kind of like, so you know how sometimes youth groups are just the young adults lead it or whatever else, or sometimes like in our case you're a part of it. So was he a part of it, or
very supportive? Father
very supportive, of course.
Very supportive of us.
But was he there present a lot or not really?
I don't really remember him during the evenings there present.
Yeah, okay.
But
supportive, of course.
Supportive, of course.
Yeah, sounds like a good guy.
Yeah.
Does your experience with him affect the way that you deal with the youth today then? Like
sure.
Yeah. And specifically, one of the
For example, like every summer I hire a summer student.
Yes, and you really do.
I hire a summer student.
My sons have been
exactly. Some of your sons have been my summer students, and not only does it give you a job, but it also helps the church. There's lots of stuff to do in the summertime. Lots of things to get caught up on. Lots of things to keep up on. So I hire a summer student, but also I always found it a privileged opportunity to be at the church.
Yeah.
And to take on some responsibility, to be around a parish setting. So I always do that. And in our youth ministry, I do try and I'm mostly at our youth events.
You are. You're very present. Yeah. I think a lot. So one of the gifts that we have in our parish, and especially our younger priests, but priests in general, is when our priests are active and not only supportive, like, go do that, but when they're actually physically there, it makes a big difference. It really does. Even just, we talked about before, like confirmation and stuff, and you're there at the confirmation, but even Father Larry is there at the confirmation, and just being present there while you're at these things allows the students to see that you're there, and whether you are up at the front or whether you're just present, it allows you, it shows them that they're important. right?
It's true.
So it's really important. Okay, big question that everyone's wanting to know: did you ever date, or were you like strictly no? I'm going to be a priest, so you know.
No, I did date specifically when, like, more seriously, I guess, when I was in university.
Yeah.
So I did date then. You know, I think that I was immature at the time to be dating. And I think within a sort of like a university context of dating, that I probably wasn't ready to date at the time. You know, and I think I kind of share that with young people today. I always say, like, if you don't have your own stuff together, don't drag another person into it. Right. And so, no, I did date, and I made some good friends in university.
So you went to university beforehand. So you weren't planning, like out of high school, you weren't planning on being a priest. That wasn't you went for an undergrad.
Yeah,
or your grad.
I was thinking about the priesthood in high school for
You
sure.
were, yeah, okay.
But no, I went and did an undergrad. I took the long route. I took the scenic route in university.
Yeah, okay.
I went to 3 different universities to get an undergrad with a major and a minor. And I had the privilege of going for a year in Italy to study.
Yeah.
So that was worth the scenic route.
Oh, wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And then when I came back from my studies, and actually that was a privileged time for me too, to be in Italy. I became friends with the priest at the parish close to my apartment in Italy, and young guy, just talked to him about the priesthood. And actually Italy gave me a kind of a moment to slow down, very different pace of life there.
Okay.
Like at home, I was working a full-time job, volunteering everywhere. I was coaching teams. I was involved with the church. I was doing all these different things and working and studying full-time. So I was hardly home. And, you know, that was hard on my family. That was hard on me.
Yeah.
And when I went to Italy, it was a different pace.
Yeah.
And I really got to start thinking about, like, what am I doing in my life?
Like slow down kind of thing?
Yeah,
or
what am I doing? Not slow down, but like I'm just aimlessly going nowhere. And I'm being a little more dramatic right now. Like I'm just doing so many things right now. But
you never had the chance to think about it.
Where's my goal? Like where am I headed? What's my next step?
Yeah, when you didn't get a chance to breathe to think about it.
Right.
It's just in robotic mode. Just
Exactly.
Go.
And the priesthood kept coming back to my heart.
Oh yeah.
So when I went home, when I returned to Canada after my year there in Italy, it was funny. I bumped into a priest who was the vocation director for our diocese at the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had sort of been wrestling, like, how do I bring this up? And how do I say, like, I've been thinking about this and whatever it might be. And when I saw him for the first time, it was in the parking lot. We were going to the same event. And he said, would you ever consider going to a come and see weekend at the seminary? And I said, yes. And I think we were both shocked that I said yes. Like I was shocked that it came out of my mouth, and he was shocked that I said yes.
Yeah.
And he capitalized on that yes. Like he registered me for the
right
next
away.
come and see weekend. And off I was. I borrowed my parents' car to go down to the seminary.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell them where I was going because I didn't want to pull the alarm here on.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And just said I was going.
How old were you?
I was
roughly.
I was 23 or 24.
So you've experienced life, you experienced university, you went to Italy, and then it's all kind of coming around, and you're feeling the call, if we will.
Yeah.
And then you go, so you do this come and see weekend. What kind of stuff? If you're going to go to a come and see weekend nowadays, or even like back then, what's the kind of things that a guy might a young man, or even maybe in the religious life, maybe a sister or something, like what would they experience at a come and see weekend? What is it?
Well, come and see weekend, you know, based from the Jesus, you know, saying come and see, basically to go and see. I know for me, it opened up my eyes a little bit. Yeah. I must say, when I arrived at the seminary, it was the first time, I had never thought I would show up to a seminary. Yeah. Like I had never thought that was going to be me. And when I showed up there, I was so nervous.
Yeah.
Like the whole way I was like nervous. And anyways, when I got there, I just experienced tremendous peace.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And you just met all the seminarians that were there. You met the priests who were on faculty. beautiful chapel, St. Peter's Seminary in London, Ontario. Breathtaking chapel.
Yeah.
And we just spend the weekend. You spend the weekend learning prayer tips, how to discern, how to pray, stories from people sharing their vocation stories, priests who are encouraging. Then they teach you a little bit about like the way of life, like what to expect in terms of study, what to expect in terms of lifestyle, sort of thing like that, right?
Like as a seminarian.
As a seminarian. Then there's time for leisure. There's socials and there's sports during the afternoon. And all these different things. So it's a big mix. Happened so fast.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I think I did something similar. So I went on a couple come and see weekends. I think it's important for all young men, Catholic men, and young women, I'm going to say, to do these come and see weekends. Because the same thing for me. I went and looked at met with a bunch of seminarians, spent the weekend, and then just kind of hanging out with them. And we went and played squash in the morning, and then we did a prayer. Well, first was prayer time. I got up at like 5:30 to do prayer time and all this stuff, and then we went and did squash as a first workout, and then they worked out. We did sometime later on. We played soccer, or maybe that was another time. We went and worked out in the workout gym. All different times during the day, all different times during the weekend, where we were working out, and it was very physical. But then there was time of studying, times of prayer, times of talking, times of sharing and dialogue, times we were cooking in the kitchen with each other, like just like a lot of fun. It was great to kind of come and see that as just realizing what your life would be like in the seminary or just living in community as a priest,
Yeah, give me clarity. Like I was like, I feel enough peace here that this is my next step.
Yeah.
So cool. I think that was in February, and I entered the seminary that September.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So when you're discerning that, and now, like say a young man was going into it, would they have to take? I mean, you'd encourage them to do a come and see weekend, but do they do more than just the come and see weekend? Jump right into the seminary now. Or
no, you can go to any. You don't have to. Yeah, there's no
requirements.
There's no like step-by-step thing. You can go to a come and see this year and not enter for a couple years. Or you can go to a come and see this year and never enter. Or you can go into it's not for sure.
Yeah.
Right? Because just because the diocese has sent you to a come and see weekend doesn't mean they've accepted you as a seminarian.
100%. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So there's a discernment on both parts. There's a discernment of the person, and there's a discernment of the church.
Yeah.
So the church discerns through the seminary and through the diocese, through the bishop, through the diocesan bishop.
So when you're going through as a seminarian, are you locked in when you went in September? Are you there now for good as a seminarian and you can't get out? Or is it something that you discern as an ongoing discerning process? Or
I mean, you're not there forever. Okay. It's a discernment time. So I had committed to 1 year, not by contract or anything, but in my heart, I was like, I'm going to go for 1 year and see if this is really for me. Yeah. Right. So I knew that if I got turned off halfway through the year, that I would stick it out the whole year. Like I committed to that, in my own heart. And then I just kept feeling peace about another year and another year and another year. Some guys stayed for a year and left. Some guys went for 2 years and left. It's a discernment process. So you're discerning with your spiritual director and with your own prayer, and the church is discerning through the seminary faculty and your vocation director and your bishop.
Okay. So when you get in there, now you go through your process. How many years till you become deacon? Because I think that's the first big...
Well, it depends. Like for me, because I already had a university degree...
Yeah. 3 years.
I spent a year in philosophy studies because I didn't have any philosophy background, and then I spent 5 years in the theological master's program, the Master's of Divinity. So 6 years in total, I was in the seminary.
Yeah, and then you're ordained a priest at the end of 6 years.
At the end of 6 years.
But
it depends. Yeah, it depends on your own thing. But what I liked about the seminary, if anyone's thinking about going, not all these years or whatever, like time flew by for me.
Yeah.
Like when people say 6 years you were there, it didn't feel like 6 years. Some guys complain about their time in the seminary. I hear priests complain about their time in the seminary. I really respect my time in the seminary. It wasn't perfect. I had some challenges. I faced some challenges myself. I faced some challenges with other seminarians or other, things that were going on.
You're living in community, so it's struggles are gonna be
so
there.
it wasn't perfect, but I loved the seminary because that was the place where I really fell in love with Jesus. Like that was the place where I came to know Christ and know him in my prayer, to know him through the Eucharist, to know him like on sort of an intimate level, I guess you would say. And so I'll always really have a soft spot for the seminary in my heart, because it was the place where it did what it was supposed to do. And I honestly, I think it's a good idea for any Christian man.
Yeah.
You know, like first, before you can be a priest, you have to be a good Christian man.
Yeah.
And the seminary tries to form good Christian men.
Yeah.
And then discern, you know, is Christ calling you to be a priest? But every Christian man should try and be a good Christian man, especially in this world. Very difficult. I entered the seminary with a group of guys that, you know, even back then when we entered the seminary, we didn't face all the difficulties and challenges that were today.
Yeah.
Even though I've only been ordained a priest now, you know, I'm going to be a priest 9 years soon. So even in that short time, things have changed, right?
Yeah.
But in every place and in every time, God calls good Christian men to be priests, right? So first, if people are discerning the priesthood, it's good to first reflect, am I being a good Christian man?
Do you think? Did you guys learn in classes, like, so you learn philosophy and those types of things? Did you guys learn like how to say a mass, or did you learn like how to administer the sacraments?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, okay.
That was in our final year.
So up until that, you're just kind of learning about philosophy, like you're doing your Masters of Divinity.
Yeah.
But part of that is in your last years when you actually learn the logistics of being a priest. Is that that's when you're already a deacon.
Well, you know, we study all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, like to celebrate the sacraments, yes, we wait till our final year when we've already been ordained deacons. To focus more on the sacraments.
Yeah. So do you get homily classes and that kind of stuff too?
Yeah, homily classes actually take place before you're
because you're a deacon. Because you can do homilies then.
Yeah, we had a great homiletics professor, Father Al Momney, wonderful preacher, wonderful professor. It was a real blessing.
That's awesome. And so do you learn things like all the different, like how to administer the sacrament of sick and that type of stuff?
Yeah.
That's all in there? Cool.
Sure.
Cool. Okay, so now let's bring it to the part of being a deacon. Your first ordination, which is being a deacon, what was that like for you? Or what was like where we go from the deacon to the priesthood and then getting into your first parish?
I was ordained a deacon in 2015 in the parish that I made my pastoral internship. So we take a pastoral internship in our seminary studies. So we go for a year in a parish. So I was ordained a deacon in that parish. And I was calm and collected for that ordination. You know, this is the one where I made my promise of celibacy.
Yeah.
And so it was like...
It was a big one.
This was the big one, yeah. But during my pastoral year, before I had the 3 years before I went on my pastoral internship, I was still going either way. Like, is God calling me or not?
Yeah.
Is God calling me or not? And I was still trying to answer the question for myself. But when I did my pastoral internship year, it was clear to me, God's calling me to be a priest.
Oh, yeah.
And when I went back to the seminary after my internship, I buckled down. Now every class was more serious to me.
It's important now.
And I was doing all my readings and I was doing because I said to myself, okay, now that I know that God's calling me to be a priest, I want to be a good one.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and you could even see just in, my dedication to my studies or all that stuff, kind of got better. My marks got better. Like everything got better because I was like, okay, God's calling me to this.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna do it well, right? So I was ready because I knew that it was time, and I was happy. It wasn't what I thought I was gonna do with my life, but I was happy that God was calling me to be a priest. So the deacon, I was calm and cool on the day of my diaconate ordination. Same with my priestly ordination.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by your family and friends and the bishop's there. And it's a really great, if you've never been to an ordination mass, it's cool because it's really beautiful.
Was it cool to say your first mass?
Yes. I said my first mass in my home parish and it was very beautiful. So, all the, Yeah, it was very beautiful. I choked up during the consecration.
I would imagine, like, that's what
bit.
I'm thinking. Like, that would be amazing.
And so did some of the priests behind me.
Yeah.
So it was very emotional. That's what I remember about my first mass. But I do remember, like, yes,
Yeah.
it's such a grace. It's not a performance or anything, right?
Yeah. No.
We pray our way through it, and that's why it was easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like I was still nervous, of course.
Yeah.
But it was easier than I thought it would be because you just allow the Holy Spirit to just help you through
get
it.
through
It was really beautiful.
Yeah, that would be really cool. That would be. I got choked up when I saw my wife for coming down the aisle and stuff. That's
Right.
when I start. But it's kind of cool because in the similar way, it's
Right.
like you're through that Eucharist. That's one of the massive, amazing times that are kind of cool.
It's true.
That's awesome. Okay, when you were so comparing it again to marriage or whatever else, when you're thinking about when you're a priest and you're a priest, you're going to be ordained, you're thinking about that. Are you dreaming about what kind of parish you're going to have or what kind of troubles you might encounter? Because you've had a pastoral year now, you have your own personal experience with church and stuff. Are you thinking, okay, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, or what are you kind of like?
I always every priest that I was stationed with, whether it was on my internship or on my practicums in the seminary or my assignments for the weekends or whatever, I always thought to myself, some things you learn like from you learn from some priests what to do.
Yeah.
And you learn from some what not to do.
You learn
That's
example
what
by example, and then
And but I think it was good, and I encourage young people who are pursuing the priesthood to do the same. But I don't want them to do it with some sort of ego or righteous attitude.
Yeah.
I want, like, I was able to think through things. Yeah. Like, I was able to say, like, okay, this is probably not the best way to
do this thing.
Celebrate a baptism for
10
people or whatever. There's probably an easier way or a more something that flows better, or that's probably not the message I would give at a funeral, or probably a message like things like that. And then ask myself why, and it was I never wanted to criticize and say what this person is doing is wrong and I'm going to do it better.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm going to do it different. And in a way, it prepares you to be your own priest. Because after a while, you're being coached by people, but you got to go out on your own.
Yeah. And so how was that? Because you're in a pastoral year. You're learning as a priest. I mean, you're learning in hanging out in a parish as a associate pastor, I'm assuming, right? Is that
okay? So after I'm ordained, So my first assignment was as an associate priest, assistant priest, and I had that assignment for 2 years. Yeah. So my first 2 years of priesthood, and then the bishop phoned me to have dinner.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, the bishop's never taken me out for dinner before. And while we were having dinner, he told me that I'm moving to where I am now, to North Bay. In my parish, the Holy Name of Jesus in St. Alphonsus. And so I said, okay.
How did you feel? Because I would imagine that there's fear, there's excitement, there's whatever, going from being associate pastor where you are really kind of under another pastor's guidance, if you will, and then moving to your own parish. It's a big leap, I guess, because up until this point, you've really been under somebody's wing almost the entire from entering into the seminary till now, right?
Yeah, I was excited.
I
was sad to leave the people I was with because I had been there and we had done so many great things in the parish in just a short time. But I was excited to start. I mean, you're a priest. You gotta get moving. You gotta get go. And the bishop, I had all these questions for the bishop about the parish.
Yeah,
and he just said, "Listen, He says he told me that I see potential in this parish.
Yeah.
And I think you're a good fit for it."
Oh, good.
So I had never been to North Bay before.
Yeah.
Maybe passed through once or something like that. But I had never been to a church in North Bay. I'd never been to, spend any time in North Bay. So I was like, okay, well. So I said, we announced it in my parish that I was going. And actually, what happened that year was because my pastor I was talking about that I was friends with growing up as a teenager, he had gotten really sick. Okay. And I was I was driving up and down the highway from Sault Ste. Marie because I was a priest. And I was driving up the highway from Sault Ste. Marie to Sudbury which is a long
3
enough
hours.
drive.
Yeah.
And I was trying to visit him in the hospital, and sometimes I stayed there with him overnight so he wasn't alone. And then he got moved to the hospice, and so he was slowly dying. And every time I left Sudbury, I would think, okay, this is the last time that I'll see him, And then he'd stick around another week. So I'd go down on a Sunday again. I drive down after Sunday to go see him. Anyways, he did pass away. I was with him when he died, which was a real blessing for me as a priest, not only as a priest, to give some last sacraments, but also as a friend, to be there, like someone who made such an impact in my life. But his funeral was in Sudbury, but his burial was here in North Bay.
Okay.
So on the day of his burial, we drove up to North Bay to bury him.
Yeah.
And then after we had buried him, I came for a little tour of
see what's going on.
The parish. That was the first time I'd even laid eyes or stepped inside the building.
Yeah. When you we're gonna have to wrap up. But when you we came from the church that you had when you first visited to the church that we have now, the parish that we have now, and people would suggest that the parish now is thriving. It's on fire. It's growing. There's lots of people. We're even talking about adding other masses in to accommodate the amount of people that are there. Lots of masses during the week. It's a very full parish, and what would you say that as a pastor of that parish, because I'm going to suggest that being here from the beginning, it wasn't necessarily as full or as flourishing as it is now. What is the gift or what is the direction that you took your parish from the time you got here till the time now? What was the main focus to bring it from where when you first got here, which did have, you had regular Sunday masses and everything else, but to this point where there's standing room only in the church on a Sunday mass? What's the main focus? If I was a young priest looking at that saying, I want to change my church, I want to bring the church into that period,
Yeah, for me, it was always just to be faithful to God. Like, sometimes churches are used as community centers.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be faithful. I wanted to put first and foremost in our church building that we serve God first.
Yeah. And
anything that stands in the way of serving God first probably shouldn't be there. But, that was my thinking. I want to put the Eucharist at the center of our church life. I want to put serving God at the center of our church life. But it wasn't my church. I wanted to come and listen to people, and I wanted to come to see what was going on in the parish, what the history is, and meet with people. And what I did find when I first came was I found a small group of angry people who were angry. They would have been angry at anyone who walked in. But I found a lot of faithful people who were desiring to know Jesus more.
Yeah.
And those were the people that helped the parish begin to flourish.
Yeah.
Right? I remember one person said to me when I first got here, like the first thing she said to me was, I'm giving you 6 weeks. And if I don't like you in 6 weeks, I'm leaving. And I said, well, nice to meet you. And so you have your challenges that way. Sometimes people are mean to priests, and I'm not looking for pity. I'm just saying there's a challenge. But what I'm saying to people, for a new pastor coming into a parish, if we remain faithful and if we're praying about our decisions, one thing is not to come in and change everything right away.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I was also learning.
Yeah.
I was also learning, and I asked people for help, and I asked the right people for help.
Yep.
And then you get to know people, and you put the right people in the right places, right? And always with the mission of putting God first, right? So, there's no socials going on while Mass is happening. There's no... our
Mass is first.
Mass is first.
Yeah.
Prayer is
Summit.
first.
Yeah.
We don't rent our hall for things that you could use at a community center that doesn't fit.
Yeah.
the
that you'd be questioned
mission
about,
of the church or whatever. Like all those things, make a huge difference. And then my goal was to make the parish a welcoming place.
Yeah.
Because if you go and invite people to a parish and it's not inviting,
Yeah.
like they're not going to come back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm just so proud of our parishioners today. And I'm just so proud of people because it's not just, people will say, oh my gosh, there's so much going on in our parish and it's so busy and it's so full. And, yeah, that's great. But what I measure our success in is our fidelity. I'm so proud of the people who pray, who love the Eucharist, who are faithful to God. Our lineups for confession and lineups for the Eucharist, those mean more to me than, how many people are coming to a social, how many people are coming to Mass. It's if we're going to lay down our life for the Lord, then that's the whole point. So I encourage young people today. You want to be a priest. There are some challenges. I face some challenges in my priesthood, but overall, nothing compared to the grace, the joy, and on a personal level, as a priest, I don't get to see my family all that much, and people might say, you can't get married, you don't have a family, all that stuff. My family knew that. When I became a priest, that
parish becomes your family.
Yeah, when someone becomes a priest, it's not only sort of a sacrifice, if you want to use that word, but it's a sacrifice for the family, right? Like, so yeah, I don't get to see my family as often. I miss some family events, and I have a large family on both my mom's side and my dad's side, large extended family, and we love hanging out with each other. So sometimes I miss events, but it's in the moments where I'm with the people that I've been entrusted to by our bishop, and I see the faith that they have, and I see their love for Jesus, and I'm able to be with them in moments at a hospice, in confession,
the good times and the bad,
the good times and the bad, that it makes it all worth it. For me, I've been really privileged as a priest. I think it's a beautiful life. I think God calls so many people to be priests because it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think people are afraid because people make you think like it's this scary, crazy thing.
Well, it is, and with the world's mentality in mind, it is a crazy thing.
Sure.
Right? If the goal of your life as a priest is contrary to the world's society of success and money and fame and all that other fun stuff, then as a priest, you're kind of not against that, but you go in the opposite direction of that a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that the world thinks you're crazy. It's a crazy goal in life to be a priest, or a crazy vocation to be called to. But I think you're living it, and you're and it's really cool to stand from a backside. I'm really happy to have you as a priest, for my boys to raise my boys next to you, to see that and have you as that faithful priest that I can always count on and rely on to give them that advice that they need. And then and to the young people, like I've worked in youth ministry for 25 years. And I love being able to work with young, faithful priests. And I keep saying young. You're getting older. You're getting older now. But when you say you're a priest for 9 years, I was like, wow, okay. But to work in ministry with priests that are faithful, that live their vocation, and it isn't an easy job. Like you said, getting up at midnight, 2:00 in the morning to go visit somebody at the hospice because they're dying, but like men and women, the sisters too, but specifically men that are called to be priests are sacrificing their life for that. It's really cool to watch it being lived out to the fullest. And I think God blesses the fruits of that labor. And that's what we see, is you see people drawn to ministry around the parishes that those men are living out that call. Does that make sense?
Yes. And what gives me hope is that while we're facing sometimes challenges as a church, and as priests or as Christians today that maybe we haven't faced in the last number of decades, there's this attitude against Christianity. There's this lack of fidelity in Catholics or Catholic institutions, hospitals, schools, those sort of things. And it seems like, the Catholic Church is losing steam. But in actuality, you're seeing an increase in faithful, loving, dedicated young priests who are being ordained to the priesthood, who love the church, who love Christ, who love the sacraments. I think the next 10 years in our church is going to be a really exciting time. Because yes, there's going to be its challenges, not everyone likes me, but you know what? I sleep well at night because I pray about these things. The Lord convicts me of things when I'm right or wrong. And I think we need more people to serve God first, And it might seem difficult, but it was difficult for Christians and priests in every age since the resurrection and ascension of Jesus.
It hasn't gotten any easier necessarily.
And I think it's a real beautiful life for young men to lay down their life to give to Christ because honestly, as much as there's been challenges, I can look back on the last 8.5 years with great joy. Great joy.
You feel fulfilled?
Yeah.
You feel a life of a priesthood is fulfilling?
Yeah, people ask me all the time, if you had to choose it again, would you? Like now knowing what it's like. And I would say, 100 times over, I would choose it. Awesome. I would choose it over and over again. And, there's some of my classmates, for example, that I graduated with. Some of them aren't priests anymore. Some of them were ordained and left the priesthood. Some of them, some people I was in the seminary with. And God bless them. I always say, I'd rather have them leave the priesthood than be a bad influence on people. Which goes for maybe some priests we know today, but that's just me being me. But God bless them for being for leaving if they're not happy.
For discerning.
But honestly, every opportunity was given to us in the seminary to grow in love with Christ. Every opportunity is given to us in the seminary by our information from our bishops, our priests. I've been really privileged to have great priests, great support, great directors, great parishioners, great bishops, great parishioners, great colleagues, teams. It's such a blessing. The church is a beautiful place, and it's a real humble privilege to be able to serve each day.
Awesome. Well, that's about all the time we got.
That's it. I think we went really long.
Yeah, we did. But, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Do you want to sign off? You want me to sign off?
When you put 40 years in an episode.
One
I'm going to sign off on this episode. Yes, that's all the time we have on this episode of the Catholic Buzz. Thanks, Josh, for having this conversation. And maybe people want to weigh in, maybe if you're listening and you have a priest that has affected your life, or maybe you've considered the priesthood or whatever, send us an email at askus@thecatholicbuzz.com or like or share this episode. So hopefully for the goodness of everyone, Matt will be back next week.
We hope so.
And they don't have to put up with us again by ourselves, right? That's all the time we have. So for Josh Sullivan, my name is Father Daniele. We'll see you next time on the Catholic Buzz.